is there hope for our marriages today? So stay tuned and we hope you'll be blessed. I'm Sunny Duki.
I'm Courtney Dookie.
We want to welcome you once again to another Family Talk Live with the Dookies, where we discuss matters of family life, whether it be related to marriage or parenting or restoring your family altar. And so today we're talking about hope, hope for marriages.
Yes, and so many um, couples I'm relating to and stories I'm hearing recently, and this is the spark behind initiating the discussion, because so many couples I'm speaking to recently who are giving the impression and saying, um, "I'm done.
Mhm.
This is hopeless. I've been doing this for so many years, and I can't do it any longer." So we just want to open up a discussion
Yeah.
and ask that question: is there hope for marriages?
Yes.
And if you're struggling, if you're one of those couples and you're struggling and you're asking yourself, can I continue? There is hope.
Yeah.
And get your pen, your notepad, and sit down
Grab
and
your spouse.
grab your spouse.
Yes.
And we're going to see, maybe we may not answer your question,
Mhm.
but still write it down, post it, and we'll respond to you.
Yes.
All right?
Yeah. And please, if you feel free to comment, we're watching your comments and we'd love to hear your questions as well. So as we talk, just type your comments in, your questions, and we'll love to answer those questions for you. So for those of you who are joining in for the first time, we are psychotherapists. We're local psychotherapists where we're from here, but we're also founders of Dukes Institute, which is an organization dedicated to restoring family life, not only for now, but also for eternity. And we focus on the area of helping you restore your family altar, um, decreasing the chaos in your home environment, and just resetting. And two areas that we also look at is really through marriage restoration or revitalization,
Mhm.
and parenting your children, disciplining to discipleship to discipling. So those are two areas that we look on. For both of us, we look at human life and experience from a holistic perspective. So the four pillars we actually work under is really becoming whole in Christ, on a physical level, spiritual level, social level, and an emotional level. So when we work with couples or families or individuals, that's the perspective we take.
And in my mind, that's the only perspective.
Yeah.
Because if we're not balanced in our marriages, balanced in our parenting, it is very difficult
Yeah.
to sustain life. And even the very question we're asking today,
Yes.
is there hope? That hope is pivoted on, are we balanced in our relationship in these areas? Are we balanced in our marriages spiritually? Are we balanced in our marriage physically? Are we taking care of our physical health? Are we balancing our marriage and spending time in the relationship to nurture and strengthen the relationship? And are we balancing our marriages in regards to taking care of ourselves mentally? If we're stressed and we're push and pull and we feel those tensions in our bodies and between us, are we spending time to address those things?
Yeah.
And it is essential that we spend time to address those four things in our marriages.
Yes. So we're going to share with you five simple things that uh, it sounds simple actually, but doing it too can be that way, even though it does take intentionality.
Yes.
And it takes a level of um, uh, what's the word now? I'm trying to. You
Commitment.
have commitment. We it takes a level of commitment, and so these are just an aspect of our relationship roadmap that we have, a relationship roadmap program that we have for Christian couples. We're just going to share a little piece of it with you. So, when it comes to restoring hope in marriage, you mentioned earlier that there is hope.
Mhm.
There is hope. Um, what about the person saying, I feel like I am fighting a losing battle? I feel like I put so much into it and the other person is just not pulling their weight.
And there is still hope in those relationships, right? And if that's you, is it easy? No, it's not easy, but there is still hope. And one of the things, it sounds so simple, and oftentimes I talk about it. I used to go with the assumption that every couple does this. If we're going to restore hope, the author
Mhm.
of hope is God. There is no hope outside of God, right? So if we're going to restore hope in our relation, if we're going
Mhm.
to restore hope in our marriages, we first need to reconnect to God. And but if we're not spending time to connect with God, either individually or collectively, then it's hard
Yeah.
for us to build a marriage and build a relationship.
Yeah.
Especially for us as Christians, we have a power that we can tap into. So, for example, if it is the wife who is not being engaged
Mhm.
in the marriage, or the husband who is not being engaged in the marriage, then we start by praying for our spouses.
Yeah.
How often do you spend time where you say, I am going to spend this week, an entire week or so, in which I'm going to dedicate an hour or 30 minutes
Yeah.
per day in which I am praying specifically for my spouse?
Mhm.
Remember, you're not praying for your spouse to have to start these immediate changes you're looking for.
Mhm.
You're praying for your spouse to have a deeper connection with God. Let me say that again. You're not praying for your spouse to become who you desire for them to be,
To change
to change
in who
them,
you want
want
them
them
to
to
be.
be. That's God's work. So what we're praying for is that you're praying that your spouse will have a connection with God.
Yeah.
Because if our spouses, if a husband and wife start to have deeper connections with God, then the natural result of that would be towards working on the marriage. So that's what I encourage Christian couples to do. Look, if you think, my spouse is not carrying his or her weight, just not doing what they're supposed to do, I am fed up, I'm tired of this, should I even bother?
Mhm.
My first recommendation, one of my first recommendations is to start to pray for your spouse. Start to pray for your spouse. Because when you start to pray, guess what's happening? Your mindset, your brain is starting to change towards your spouse. And then you're giving God the permission to enter your spouse's life. Two things going on at the same time.
Activating
You
his
have to
power.
activate some power in your spouse's life. So again,
Yeah.
two things going on. As you seek to pray for your spouse, there's some neurological transformation that's taking place inside of you because you're seeing things differently. You're saying things to God. And as you experience that change, look, listen, try to be angry at someone and pray for them. No, try to be angry at someone and pray sincerely.
Yeah. See what happens.
See what happens. It's going to feel weird to you, right? So therefore, if you're praying for your spouse, you're actually seeking to regulate your own emotions towards your spouse. So pray for your spouse, and then you're having your personal transformation through that, but you're also giving God the power to activate something with your
Yeah.
spouse.
Yeah. So that is the first thing that we want to encourage you today is to put God first um, in your in this situation. Honestly, because it's hard, from all the human effort that we've put in. Sometimes we're trying our best,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe with all my heart that God can really transform situations. I know we are psychotherapists too and marriage coaches, so we believe that you have to put that work in.
Mm-hmm.
But the in our work with Christian couples, we encourage that. Put
Yes.
God first. So for those who are joining us for the first time or just joining in, hello Marina, thanks for joining us. And we're talking about 5 ways you can restore hope in your marriage. And I hope this is an encouragement to you. Or if you know someone out there who would be encouraged by what we're doing as well, what we're talking about, please feel free to share this video with them, and just, be a source of light in their life as well. So I have some verses here to complement what you're saying here. And I just want you to know that even though you're praying, sometimes the answer may not come the
Same.
same time, because I know there are many husbands out there that are praying, many wives out there that are praying. I just want you to know that the Lord hears you.
Yes.
Isaiah 65 verse 24 says, "Before they call, I will answer.
Mhm.
While they're yet speaking, I will hear." And I just want to encourage you today that even before you start to utter the words from your mouth, the Lord already knows what is on your heart. Psalm 18 verse 6 says, "In my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help. From his temple, he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears."
Mm.
Hello, Miss Karen. Thanks for joining us. And the last verse I want to share with you today is just to encourage you guys, just to encourage you, is to cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Because a lot of times when we try to take control of everything of ourselves, we're fixing everything. We're fixing our
Mhm.
husband or wife. We can make the situation worse. We start to push the other person away. So the Lord is saying here to you today to cast your burden on him because he cares for you. And remember that he hears you. He hears your cry. And I was so encouraged. I'm in a group for marriage life. I'm in a group like that. And to hear some couples mention how God really brought their marriage from the dead,
Mm.
I was so encouraged when I heard it. They were saying, we really thought that, we were going to make it. And they were encouraging others who were saying, "Yeah, I wish God can come through like this for real." They're like, "Yes, he can because he did for ours." And so I want to share the same thing to you as well, that he
The thing is
can
that
come
what we
through.
don't get sometimes, and this sounds strange, God is more invested
Yeah.
in our marriages than we are. It doesn't matter who you are, God is more invested in your marriage than you
And look how much effort we're putting in, hey?
are. So, i- i- sometimes, well, all the time,
Yeah.
we need to put God first. Now, the verses that Sana just read there, that God is waiting to answer us. God is waiting for us. He's aware of it.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful lesson in that text. Because God is already aware of what's going on in our marriages. Why not just fix it? Why is it
Mhm.
that He's asking for us to come?
Yeah.
And I think there's science for this, but the practical aspect of this calling us to come, but also there's a science. Because God is aware that when we come to Him, we start to open ourselves up because we're not open up to God. And what we see is that when we sort of open ourselves up to God, there start to be emotional regulation. When I am being regulated, I am much more better in a place to approach
To
my spouse,
approach.
and I
Yeah.
can approach in the right way, the right manner,
Right
and
mindset.
mindset. But not only that, I can fulfill what the Bible says when let my speech be with grace. Now, if I'm not connecting to God, those speech will not be with grace.
Yeah.
But if I allow my speech to be with grace, then I can start a transformation in both myself and my partner. And that's another thing we talk about in future talks about when we talk about gracious speech,
Yeah.
what it can do,
What it does.
that does in our marriages. But no, principle number one we're looking at today, five things. Number one, allow God to be first, foremost, and center of your marriage.
Yeah.
Any Christian marriage that is not putting God first is a Christian marriage that will fail.
Mm. I struggle. a lot for a
struggle,
very long time.
struggle. But the reality, it will fail
Yeah.
because two human beings cannot, on their own, be live a spiritual marriage without God. Again, you may say, but there's people who don't believe in God and they have healthy, strong relationship. Yes, I agree with that. I'm not going to doubt that. But I'm saying for a Christian man, if we want that happiness, that connection, that solid foundation, any Christian marriage that is not putting God first will struggle
Be
significantly.
or operating in survival mode,
More.
because
Yes.
I think a lot of that is happening
Mhm.
where it's on the outside we're smiling, but in our home, in our bedroom, we're in survival mode.
Survival
We're
mode, yes.
just taking, it's we're having a hard time. Next day is the same thing, and some of us going to bed crying, some of us avoiding home
Yes.
the situation because, and the Lord really does not want us to live that way. That's not why He designed marriage. He designed marriage because He knows that there's a beautiful thing. It is beautiful, and He wants us to experience that. So let us move on to our next. Let's move on to our next one. So the next one we have is resentment. Resentment. So the next step is dealing with resentment.
Resentment. Right. So with resentment, we're looking at both small and great things, experiences that we've been through in a relationship that we still hold against each other. So I use the word small and great because some things are like, that's nothing. It could something simple be as your spouse is always late. There's something like that. For some people, man, that's a simple thing. You're late, right? But in your heart, you're holding it against your spouse that they've always been late, and it triggers something inside of you. What I would recommend, when I said earlier, go get your pen and your paper, is to sit down and think deeply about all the things you think you hold resentment towards your spouse. Doesn't matter how big or small they are. I've worked with couples in which one may say, you know what, when I was given, the wife would say, when I was given birth, the husband showed up late. And she, in her mind, she's like, oh, yeah, that's all right. But she held resentment. And when the children are now 18 years old or older, they're saying, yes, and they're working in therapy and says, she's bringing up, look, at this point, you showed up late. 18, 19, 20 years ago. She's still, even though she said there was nothing to it, there's a part of her that is still disappointed, still have strong emotions about the fact that he showed up late when she was giving birth to their child. So you want to write down all these things. And if we don't write down these resentments, it's hard to move into the third part of this because we gotta know what is it, what are the things that are creating blockage and barriers between us and us.
Yes. So the third one,
Forgiveness.
forgiveness.
So we have to first come to face to face
Yes.
with resentment.
Yeah. So is there anything I'm harboring? Because
Yes.
sometimes we don't even realize, right? So Scripture says, "Search me, O Lord,
Yes.
search
Search
me,
me.
O God,
Yeah.
and see if there's any." So we have to pray that prayer,
Yes.
just like David did, because sometimes there are things that we don't even recognize is there, and it is impacting our behavior towards our spouse.
It is.
And then little by little, we start vocalizing it,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes a part of our narrative towards our spouse. So it's very important to ask God to help to reveal these things to us. And then if once we find that, once we become aware of these things,
Mm-hmm.
then we ask God to help us
To forgive.
to forgive.
But not only that, and this is why forgiveness will become an essential piece.
Yeah.
With resentment, when we have built up resentment towards our partner, we sort of release cortisol in our bodies, right? And cortisol is a stress hormone. It's good because cortisol is what, pushes us to wake up in the morning to go do our stuff. But when we have too much cortisol, it can be problematic. Or
Becomes
too,
toxic.
so if we have too much cortisol being released, it's problematic. If we have too little cortisol in our bloodstream, it is problematic. And when we have a resentment, we release cortisol. We're stressed, we're flustered, we feel disappointed, discouraged, and we have all this stress hormone running through our bodies. And as it continues to run through our bodies, eventually we don't feel stress anymore because the body goes back into a relaxed state. But because we haven't resolved the thing that causes stress in the first place, the body keeps releasing cortisol.
Yeah.
And over time, the body gets into an exhaustion because we're not dealing with all these resentment, all these things that are coming up, and we're not dealing with them. So over time, they build up until we get to the place where we ask the question, is there hope? Oftentimes, when we get to that place to ask the question, is there hope? Should I throw in the towel? Do I need to do this anymore? It means that there's something inside of us that is boiling and boiling and boiling. And we have said, what, I can do this, I can do this. He will change, he will change. But we never spend time to address it. And we have to spend time to address these
Be
things.
intentional about it.
Intentional. And if you want to hear us talk about intentional more, I think the last video we did,
Yeah.
we
How
talked
to
a lot
fortify your family.
yeah, about being intentional in your marriage. So what? Notice resentment. Once you've identified these resentments,
Yeah.
we move to the next stage.
Mm.
So notice we said God first, identify your resentments. Now we're gonna forgive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, forgiveness is like drinking poison.
Unforgiveness.
Unforgiveness, sorry. Unforgiveness
Yes.
is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to.
Yes. So we want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts so far? Um, are these 3 steps we have outlined? What do you think about it? Do you think that this is something that will help to bring hope, bring back hope in your marriage? We want to hear what you have to say. Ephesians 4:31 to 32 said, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you." And this is one of my favorite topics when I'm speaking with parents. That's my thing. Um, but when we're speaking with parents, we talk about the fact that you want to treat your child just as how Christ treat you, because you're always making mistakes. You're always doing something wayward and running away from Christ. And He's like, "Come, please come back to me. Come back to me." And it's the same thing here, that we in our couples relationship, we also need to be compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ um, forgave us.
The verse that you just read started by saying what? Get rid of all bitterness. Imagine in your marriage if we get rid of all bitterness.
Mm.
Bitterness could be very bitter,
Yeah.
slightly bitter.
Yeah.
All bitterness. And that, in other words, we could replace bitterness with resentment. Get rid of all resentment. And how do we get rid of all resentment? We forgive each other, just like what Christ forgave.
Yeah. Just look at it that way. That's what we call a restorative spirit.
It is. Because it moves into another thing we want to talk about. We're throwing these things at you and trying to put them together. Is that one of the things we need to be?
Yes. Yeah.
A spirit of humility will go a long way in.
And that is our next.
It is.
That's our next point, guys. So we've introduced 3 to you already. Put God first. Deal with resentment, forgiveness, and then our fourth is be humble. Be humble and open, because when we do have pride in our hearts, it's gonna be hard to confess and to really be accountable for what we have done wrong.
Yeah.
And if you're blocked your mind, seeing where you have some level of responsibility or something, then you're gonna always feel that it's the other person.
person.
It's only the other person that needs to put in the work. And we have seen that, some individuals want to come in and do the work, but the others like, no,
No.
you need to go. That's your thing. You have the
Mm-hmm.
problem. You deal with the problem, right? So, yes, I figured that. I figured that, Marina. No problem. Yeah. So we were asking that you pray about whether you have pride in your heart and
Mm-hmm.
pray for a spirit of humility.
You see, the if we don't cultivate the spirit of humility in our relationship, we're going to cultivate two other things: defensiveness and a lack of responsibility. So think of it. If we don't nurture the spirit of humility in our marriages, two things are going to happen. We are going to foster the spirit of um, where we're defensive, spirit of defensiveness,
Yeah.
where everything our spouse says, we're defensive about it.
Yes.
And then we don't take responsibility because it's never my fault. It's always your fault. So if we are defensive and we're not taking responsibility, then nothing will get resolved.
Yes. And that's where it is so hard because the other person is working very hard. They're trying their best to give all they can to the relationship, and
Mhm.
because we are blaming, say, hey, I don't have anything, you're the one who is picking too much, nitpicking too
Mhm.
much,
Mhm.
or you're the one who things trouble you, whatever it is. it, it's so challenging.
Challenging.
So for the person who is listening, who your significant other have been coming to you and they've been saying, hey, these things have been happening, this is how it affects me, this is how it makes me feel, this is what it's doing to our family. Even if they're doing it in a complaining way or in a way that is maybe not respectful at all, but look behind what they're saying. Like, look beyond, look at the
Mhm.
root. Like, why is it that they keep coming to me with this same conversation,
Conversation.
right? It must be something, there must be something there, right?
Yes.
And that's where we have to have the spirit of Christ as well, because look, Christ had a servant spirit. He could have been king on the highest mountain on earth, right? But what did he do? He came and he was humble. He washed his students' feet. He washed his disciples' feet. Something that Peter is like, "Are you crazy, man? Like, I'm the one supposed to be washing your feet. Like, come on." But that's how humble he was, and it's the same type of spirit that we need to cultivate as a couple. Like, how can I serve you? And if something is coming up over and over in my heart, I need to see how I am
Mhm.
contributing to that situation, or how I can support in helping to
Restore
restore.
that.
And if we really have that mindset, I'm talking to that person who is uh, bent on saying, I'm not the problem. I'm talking to you. Please pray about it and ask God to reveal to you what it is that you need to do in order to help to step up, to help to restore your
So
relationship, because it is possible.
it
Instead of
is.
sitting in contention and saying, I'm going to go live on the rooftop because you are so miserable, I don't know, like we've heard that before, right? Instead of doing that, just really think, is there something I can do? What is
Can
it
do.
that they're trying to say to me?
Yeah.
And what can I do to help to restore this?
Restore.
Even if I can't see it right now,
Mhm.
what are the things that we can do? Do we need to see a therapist? Do we need to see a coach? Do we need to go to a pastor or an older couple that we
Trust.
trust, that they've been married for years and years, they have tons of experience? We could go to them, right? You know, things like those we want to ask.
And if you do what Sunny is saying, at times you're gonna feel morally justified
You know,
because you think it's not my fault, it's their fault. So why should I do
mhm,
anything?
mhm.
Takes two to tango.
Yeah,
Takes two. So is it 5% that you're responsible for? Take
Take
responsibility for your part.
responsibility of that.
If it is 1%, take responsibility for that part.
Mhm.
So again, but notice what we've gone through. If we're putting God first,
Mm.
God is center of our relationship. God is first. We've looked at bringing up those resentments, taking them to God in prayer, forgiving our spouse for those things that happened in the past. And if we're forgiving them, and then we say, you know what, I'm going to do this with a spirit of humility, and the spirit of contrition and humility, and approach my spouse that way. Then we move to number five, which is slowly, underline that word, slowly building or rebuilding trust. Trust is not some, it is so, it takes a time to build trust,
Mhm.
but it also goes down like this,
Yes.
right?
It takes years to build trust and takes a second to break
To
it.
break it. So what we needed to do is to say, okay, what are some things that we can do to rebuild trust? And in all the programs we've done, these are things we train couples to do. We train couples how to connect deeper with God. We train couples how to work through the resentments. We train couples on how to work the forgiveness. We train couples on how to practice humility. But not only the practice humility, we also train couples on how to rebuild trust in their marriages. All these things are possible.
Yes. And this is not linear. It's
No,
not one step. It's you're always implementing these
implementing.
things because even with the trust aspect,
Yes.
we're still humans, right? And there are times we're going to have a slip up, right?
Yes.
But we're still cultivating a spirit of humility, forgiveness, and not harboring resentment. And that's how the relationship gets stronger
Strong.
and stronger.
It's about being open. Openness in relationship means that if, especially when building trust, trust is built on intention and perception. Oftentimes, my partner may intend to do something that perceives wrong.
Mhm.
If I am open to listen to my partner and see where they're coming from, it may strengthen the relationship and build trust and trust.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too because sometimes, really, really and truly, we can't identify anything on our part.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's not what you're doing; it's sometimes it's what we're not doing.
We're not doing,
right?
or how what we're doing is being perceived
Yes.
by the other
So,
person.
because we have cases, attachment, concerns, mental health, all that stuff, and but we can once we're humble and we want to say, okay, I want to see how much I can give to this relationship
Mm-hmm.
and get that support, get that coaching support or that mentorship support.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your part.
Yes.
You're doing your part.
And that's what we want to share with you today.
Yeah.
Go to God. Listen to if you're watching the replay, you can type in replay.
Yes, let us know.
Let us know. And if you need more resources to help you with this, let us know.
Send us a message.
A message.
I'm always there listening, hearing, talking to people on Messenger.
There you go. If you're part of a church or organization, you're like,
Yes.
I need these people to come and talk about these things in more
Yes.
detail, let us know.
We'll
open.
be there. I'm echoing everything I'm saying.
We're willing to do this. This is the ministry what we're doing. We're trying to connect with churches and individuals and groups and how to rebuild our families. Our families are struggling and we live in a very interesting time
Yeah.
when it comes to families. The devil is trying to destroy families, destroy couples, destroy parent-child relationships.
Mm.
And that's why I want to remind you today that there is hope
There is hope.
for your marriage.
Yes.
Guys, I've seen so many relationships. I've worked with so many couples, and a lot of couples that I've worked with will come in and they'll say, Courtney, you are our last chance.
Mm.
I don't like that responsibility, but oftentimes they'll come in and says, if you don't work, this is it.
Mm.
And they sort of practice things. They work on different parts of themselves. They work on connecting to God. And within a short time, each one of a different length of time, they sort of reconnect.
So it's
Transformation
possible.
starts.
It is possible.
Couples have come to me with where affairs had happened, and it destroyed the entire family, the children, and everyone. And we spend time and time working through this, working with the children, working with the couple, working with the entire family, and to see the restoration, the healing takes place. I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying to you today. It doesn't matter where you are, there is hope. I've seen it firsthand. I've worked with numerous couples where they're restored and their connection to God is stronger and they're thriving in their marriage. They're thriving in their parental relationship and they're thriving in life in general. So, there is.
So if that sounds like you, please reach out to us. We have a wonderful program that we take years of experience that we've put together, especially for you. So send us a message today. And on this note, we just want to thank you for joining us for today's session, and we ask that you join us next week again. This time, if you'd like to join our mailing list so I can send you out reminders of this, please send me a message with your email address or just comment below me and I'll reach out to you, okay? Just so I can send you notifications when we're having our programs or talks or whatever it is that we're, our free resources, or more information about our program. We can share that with you. So until next time, we pray that God bless
Bless
you,
you.
keep you, restore you, reignite you, because we believe He can. Just open up your heart and your arms to Him and allow Him to do His thing
Yes.
in in your marriage today.
And remember, we are seeking to transform families for today, but also
For
for
eternity.
eternity. Take
Take
care.
care. Bye
Bye bye.
bye.